All right, everybody, welcome back. We're gonna have to start trying to figure out what we're gonna call these episodes and seasons and all of this because we're gonna do college, NFL, all of this. But it's chasing winners. This is our second NFL episode of the season. We did the preseason one with our preseason futures, all that kind of stuff. Normally, me, JP, and Kyle. Kyle is out today, helping script the next ending of Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. So, JP, it's me and you today. JP, what's up?
Not too much. Looking forward to week one. It's been kind of a miserable couple days without football, so gonna need some football back tomorrow.
It was interesting because I was listening to people talk about like, oh, week one of college next week, like that's where we're at, we're here, we're whatever. That's just a battle. When you've got college on Saturday and you've got NFL on Sunday, that is literally a full blown war every single weekend from Thursday once that NFL game goes off till Monday night till that game's off. College is great, especially when you've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But an NFL Sunday after a college Saturday, that's where boys become men.
Yeah, I started doing this notes app on my phone just of games I want to watch on TV this weekend, and this weekend I have 10 college games in a 14-hour span, and then I need to go to bed and wake up for NFL football starting at noon the next day. So I realized I have less than 15 hours between the end of the Baylor game and the start of the Vikings game, and that's not okay.
I've got good news for you. That Baylor game is going to be over fairly early because BYU is going to win by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I just can't see it happening.
And the other thing that you said, which is a mistake, but I'll let you do you. You don't have to go to bed. You're choosing to go to bed. You could stay up.
I need to sleep because if I don't sleep, then that's not going to go well on Sunday either.
But then, and we'll get to the Vikings Packers. But then when the Vikings lose, if you have no sleep, you have an excuse. Like I'm cranky because I got no sleep.
The Vikings are my excuse.
See, that's what I said. It's like built-in excuse. You got to build in your excuse. Like I already told you, the Ravens can't lose this week. They're either going to win or Joe Flacco's going to win, and Joe Flacco's a Raven for life. It's all about building in your excuses, especially week one, because we always talk about it. Week one, week two, and I guess it's week 18 now. Those are the 3 weeks that are almost the most unpredictable because you're trying to go off what happened last year. Week 18, obviously, who knows who's playing, who's sitting, who's all that, who's already clinched stuff. But the first 2 weeks, you're really trying to gauge where teams are based on last year, what they've done this year, and then obviously not necessarily this week, but next week, trying to figure out what happens in week one. Was that a fluke? Was that how these teams are? Because we've learned from the NFL, college is much more, not that it's, set in stone, but college is much more. You can kind of do that transitive property and kind of look at, this team played this team and this team killed this team, so this team should beat this team. In college, it's a lot more, I guess that's a successful way of looking at it. In the NFL, we've learned what happens the week before literally has no impact on what happens the week after. So I guess I'll just ask you, how do you start with week one? How do you approach it? Are you trying to go off just gut feeling? Are you trying to go off how teams were last year? Are you looking at off-season changes? Is it, how do you do it?
I mean, it's all kind of a mix. I look at like we talked about in the preseason pod. There's just teams that I have a gut feeling about, like the Saints, that I know they should be good on paper, and I look at what they brought in, and I love them. So I don't want to give away one of my best bets, but when they're playing the Falcons, that's just not a team. If you look at last year, and I don't know of anything special that they did on defense, so when you look at that game this week, it's just something that you kind of have to take into consideration there.
And the one thing that I kind of look at it early in the season is because you know me, I'm a big Vegas money kind of guy, looking at where the money's coming in, where bets are going. I think for week one and week two, especially, those are almost like I'm more likely to kind of, if I see the trap, walk into it because it's kind of like maybe it is a trap. And, even we could look back at 14 weeks and be like, well, that was a trap. But it just seems like what you said, like with the Saints and the Falcons, it's like sometimes it's just like I'd rather just have the money on the Saints, especially week one or week two against a team like the Falcons, as opposed to betting on the Falcons and the Falcons losing by 40 and being like, well, this was obvious. Just kind of putting the money on the right team and being like, I'll accept my losses the first couple of weeks. Just kind of taking, what we'll call the basic bitch play sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into it. Let's just go through. We'll go through some of these games. We got like 6 or 7 games picked out, plus the Thursday night, plus the Sunday night game. Let's do that. But as always, make sure you guys give us a subscribe. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you follow both of us on Twitter. I guess we'll tell them to follow Kyle even though they're not here. But obviously, I'm Gambling DFS Tips on Twitter. JP is Viking Fan JP on Twitter. And Kyle is K Mastoloni on Twitter. So make sure you're following all of us. Our picks, what we give out on the pod, they'll be our picks. We're not going to change them, but there's a chance we could potentially add more, towards once the games come or something like that. So make sure you guys are following us on the YouTube as well, because we'll post any added picks under the comments, or we'll tweet it out or something, just so we can keep a full track of them. But all right, enough housekeeping. Let's get into it. Game 1 of the NFL season, Thursday night. It is the reigning, defending, undisputed champions of the NFL that somebody said was going to win the Super Bowl last year, that somebody picked the Super Bowl MVP correctly last year. It is the Los Angeles Rams. They are at home. That Thursday night game, they get that championship Thursday night game at home. They'll raise the banner. Is it in the NFL? It's still raising a banner, right? It's not lowering a banner. We always talk about there's lowering a banner. They raise it, right? Because don't some places they lower it? We always say they're raising the banner, but technically, aren't some of the banners they come from the ceiling and they lower it? Yeah, put you in.
Well, you're asking the wrong person. I don't see a lot of championship banners. So.
Well, I think you have the most recent one out of all of us.
Yeah, but they I actually was there.
They just stuck a sticker on the ceiling. They just stuck a sticker and said national champions.
Well, no, I was there when they unveiled that banner, but it's they had the banner up and they just had a covering over it, and then they pull down the covering. But you're not raising it or lowering it; it's there.
But that's the phrase they would say. They're going to raise the championship banner, and it's
right.
The banner's kind of already up there, and if we're talking logistics, it's actually lowering it from the ceiling. But we'll get into that later.
We've only gotten Rams, a little sidetracked here.
The Rams. Hey, at least we've made it through 0 games before we got sidetracked. The Rams are at home, the champions, against what many people believe are the future Super Bowl champions for some reason, even though they've proven nothing. The Buffalo Bills. The Bills are a 2-point favorite at home against the Rams. The over-under they're at the Rams, sorry. The over-under is 51.5. I'll let you go first because I know we're on opposite sides of this. To me, the champs are just being disrespected in this spot. But you like the visitors.
I like the Bills here. To me, it just seems like a game that the Bills aren't going to lose because that would put a damper on their expectations for the entire rest of the season.
This is a game you can lose. You lose the first game of the year at the Super Bowl champions the night that they're celebrating.
Yeah, I mean it's not a game you can't lose. It's not one of those type of games, but it's one that kind of those expectations that everyone's placed on them. Everyone thinks they're going to be the
you want to get the momentum going.
And to me, it just seems like a game that they aren't going to lose. I don't have a ton of in-depth stats on the offense or the defense or anything. It's Josh Allen, and I trust him over Matthew Stafford. And it's a game that the Bills shouldn't lose if they're going to be that type of elite team.
Yeah, I get it, and who knows if I'll have actual money on either side of this. For the purpose of the pod, I'm going to take the Rams just because, like I said, I feel like they're being disrespected. Especially on a night when, we talked about they raise, whatever we want to call it, the championship banner. They've got that, The Rams especially, the Chargers too, but the Rams especially have been known for, fans not really showing up, not having a huge fan base, not whatever. If there's going to be a game when there's a lot of fans, when, there's, I don't want to say fans, but Rams fans and fans that are there cheering and wanting to be there, not just, we're in LA, let's go see a football game. I think this is the game. But who knows? You could also see 70% of Buffalo just travel across the country and end up.
I think Thursday night, work night, school night. I think I would see less there than a Sunday to me. Or they just stay in LA because they work in LA and then they go to a football game. That's not a bad night either.
It's game 1 of the NFL season. We're already speculating on crowd size and what
over under 50,000.
Yeah, right.
Do you have over under 3,000 Rams fans there?
What does SoFi hold? Do we know? Is it it's not even that much, right? Wasn't that the big thing that they built this huge stadium and it only holds I think 40 or 50,000 people?
It holds. Oh, it can typically seat 70,000.
70, okay. I think okay, but I guess that's almost even. It's still stadiums being built now, like they should be holding close to 100,000 people. Like maybe not the Rams and the Chargers because they're never going to find 100,000 people to come to the games. But all right, so you are on the Bills -2. I'm on the Rams +2. Kyle's on the Rams +2 as well. And I'll have actually a best bet on this game later, which we'll get into when we get into the best bets. Let's go to Sunday at 1 o'clock. Two of my division rivals. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 6.5-point favorites at home. This over-under is 44. The Bengals obviously coming off that Super Bowl loss to the Rams. An interesting stat for you, the Bengals have covered 8 games in a row dating back to last year. If they cover 9 in a row, I believe they'll be the first team to cover 9 games in a row in the 2000s. So it might even date back further than that, but that's the stat that I saw. Like I said, they're a 6.5-point favorite at home. I'm the only one that's got a bet on the side here. Kyle takes the under. You're on the other side of the total. So since Kyle's not here, I'll let you give your reasoning on the over here.
Yeah, I just think, that Cincinnati offense last year was cooking. Their defense kind of wasn't who they were built out to be. They were built as an offensive team, and Eli Apple was their corner that everybody loved to clown. But on the other side, the Steelers are kind of building that offense. I talked about them a little in the preseason pod where they have all those weapons there that they can use on the offensive side of the ball. I love the receiving core they have there. And I think 44 is pretty low here. So between those two offenses, I'd say they can put up 44 points. I love either side. So I lean the over here.
I like the over too, but isn't this just one of those games where it just feels like when you just like blindly pick Bengals Steelers, like there's never a bunch of points scored. You'll randomly have like one of those two shootouts, but this just feels like, one of those games where there's not, which I think may contribute to why that number is so low, because especially like I said early in the season, teams are going to have the kind of thing. Obviously the Steelers, they're without Ben this year. They're starting with Mitch. I actually think Mitch is going to have a decent year. I think he's in a good situation there. I think he was I don't want to say it was Nagy's fault, but I think it got to a point where very few quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, would have been successful in the position Mitch was in, just because shit hit the fan so quick there. After Chicago had their playoff seasons and Nagy Coach of the Year, and everyone's like, oh, this is it, and then all of a sudden it just all hit the fan. So that's why I'm on the Steelers. I think the Steelers plus 6.5. I feel like they keep this game close. I don't think they win this game, but I think, like you said, I think there's some points scored. When I was looking at this, I kind of think it's Bengals, 27, 23, 27, 26, something like that in that range. So, yeah, I like the Steelers plus 6.5 for the purposes of the pod. Let's go Cleveland at Carolina. Carolina is a 1.5-point favorite. This over-under is 42. It's another 1 o'clock game on Sunday. Cleveland, obviously, without Deshaun Watson. Jacoby Brissett will be the starter there. In what we want to call the revenge spot of all revenge spots, Baker Mayfield and the Panthers at home against the Deshaun Watson-less. Did I say that right? Deshaun Watson-less Cleveland Browns. JP, we are all on the Panthers here. Does that scare you?
Terrifies me. It's a spot where it's two teams that no one really thinks are going to do much of anything this year, and it's just another example of #NFL rigged, where the quarterbacks are leaving the team, but they immediately go to play then. But here you have to think Panthers have better receivers, they have the better running back, they have better quarterback because Baker's better than Jacoby Brissett. I don't think they have a better coach because Matt Rule's not an NFL coach. But in this spot, I don't think Baker can really afford to lose this game, and he's going to do some Baker things, which is going to keep the Browns close, but not within 2 points.
I just don't think they're going to be able to stop the Panthers. I think just in terms of just like a scheming point of view, obviously you got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, but even spreading him out, I just think there's using him out wide. They've got DJ Moore. We've talked about with Baker. Baker the one thing that's underappreciated about Baker, and I'm not gonna say he's a running quarterback, but Baker's able to scramble. Baker's able to get out of the pocket. Able to find those kind of extra second and a half, 2 seconds that allows the guys like a McCaffrey to be able to get open. And those are the kind of guys that once you give them that time, they can. Cleveland's defense, statistically, the past couple of years has been all right, but it's just one of those teams like when you play them, it just doesn't do much for you. You just look at it, and it's just like they kind of put up some decent numbers. They're, I don't know. What do you think about that defense? Because that defense, I feel like, is when you talk about like AFC North defenses, I feel like they're kind of in that same kind of category as like the Bengals. Like I think people look at the Ravens and the Steelers as kind of the two better defenses. They've kind of couple guys. Obviously, when you talk about Cleveland defense, the first guy you got to talk about is Myles Garrett. You could argue he's, a top 3 player in the NFL, especially at his position. What do you think of their defense just overall?
Honestly, and I'm going to look it up now, but I don't know that I could name a single other player on the Browns defense other than Myles Garrett.
And the only other guy the first guy that comes to mind for me in terms of the Browns is Greedy Williams. And he's like one of those guys that he always gets like this like shine of like being a good safety, and it's just, whatever. I mean, they do have some guys in that in the secondary. The secondary is all right.
Oh yeah, Ward and Delpit are there still, yeah.
And but it's like there's always guys that they just feel like a team that they never, and even kind of like the Ravens, we can get to the Ravens later, but it feels like they're never fully healthy in that secondary all at once. There's always a guy or two missing. And when there is, that kind of, because I think the big thing is, and we always talk about defense, the way that I look at it, defense is much more of a cohesive unit than offense, just in general, where in offense you could have much more, we'll call it 11 playmakers, just putting them out there and just kind of do your thing. Defenses, especially at the NFL level, you've got to have the players, but you've got to have the scheme. You got to have the guys that can work together. And because obviously we see all the time, a guy wide open down the field, and who knows if it's the corners blown coverage, the safeties blown coverage. You could look at it and be like, oh, well, this guy, he probably should have been there, but who knows what the scheme is? Who knows who blows it up? All that kind of stuff. So teams like that, where they kind of can never get, especially a unit like the secondary, healthy all at once. That's just, and I guess week 1 is a good time for them to be healthy and be able to do it. But to me, that just seems like a team that if they can all stay healthy, I could see that defense being a top 10 defense. By the end of the year, it's one of those things I got to see it to believe it.
Yeah, can't really disagree there.
All right, let's go. The last 1:00 game we're going to talk about: the New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins 3.5-point favorites at home. 46.5 is that total. Obviously, here Tyreek Hill, the big addition for the Dolphins. JP, what are your thoughts on this
game? This is one of those games where I just really basing my pick on last year for both teams. Neither of those two teams was much of an over team in most games last year. Patriots always have a decent defense. Didn't have much of an offense last year. They didn't have any weapons for Mac Jones to throw to. Miami didn't have a lot of weapons. I forgot this is the Devontae Parker revenge game.
So what do you think of Mac Jones? Just in general.
He's for me.
Is he a starting quarterback in the NFL in 2027?
He will be if they can put another Devontae Parker around him. If he doesn't, if that's his best receiver and there's nobody else for the next 5 years, then he won't be.
And we didn't mention, we're recording this on the Wednesday of week 1, so Thursday injury reports haven't even come out yet.
Yeah.
So obviously, hopefully, going forward later in the year, we'll be able to do Thursday nights and have at least some basic injury reports. So kind of, we're doing all this without injury reports. So just a heads up, once again, building in more excuses, how you got to do it. So, all right. So yeah, you were talking about both offenses struggling a little bit. I guess that's leading towards your pick.
Yeah, kind of like Tua's just not. Maybe he's going to surprise me this year, but he hasn't shown the ability to lead the Dolphins down the field and put up a ton of points. So I'm looking under 46.5 here. Xavier Howard on the outside covering Devontae Parker for the Dolphins, and then the Pats defense still always being pretty good. That's why I'm kind of leading the under here because I don't really love either side.
All right, let's play a game. Let's play Tua or. I'm going to give you another guy. You tell me, and this is just for one season. So we're not going to include age and, all that. I'm just going to give you a couple guys. You tell me, for this year, would you rather have Tua or the other guy as your quarterback? And we'll start with Carson Wentz.
Tua
or Zach Wilson?
Probably Tua.
Tua or Baker Mayfield?
Baker.
And the final one, Tua or Matt Ryan?
Matt Ryan.
I don't know what the point of that was. I was just kind of, I think the point is that Tua is kind of considered that middle echelon kind of quarterbacks. This is kind of the year he can have that quote prove it year we always talk about. But I think that's kind of just important is, when you're looking at these games and you're trying to pick a side, you're trying to look at the quarterbacks. So then I guess the obvious question, is it Tua or Mac Jones? Who would you rather have as your quarterback? Yeah, I think it's Mac.
I'd say so too. Yeah. Because I trust him more to throw a ball.
Can't wait for in 10 weeks Tua to be like an MVP candidate and still be like, how dumb those guys were.
We're like, yeah, we'd still take Mac.
So, all right. So, yeah, you mentioned you're on the under. We all are on different picks this game. You're on the under. I like the Dolphins. Kyle likes the Patriots. For me, it's always good being on the opposite side of Kyle, so I'm not going to complain about that. I don't know if I'm going to put actual real money on it because it is kind of one of those weird lines. Maybe the Dolphins' money line ends up in a parlay somewhere. But for the purposes of the pod, I will take the Dolphins -3.5. All right, first of the 4 o'clock slate games. And when I say 4 o'clock slate, because people always give me shit for this, it's either 4:05 or 4:15 or 4:25. I don't know what time exactly. The 4 o'clock slate, everybody fucking knows what the 4 o'clock slate is. There's games after 1 o'clock and not Sunday night. The 4 o'clock slate. So the first one we'll talk about, the Chiefs at the Cardinals. Chiefs 6-point favorite at Arizona. That totals 54. I guess we talked last game. The big news was Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins. The big news in this game is Tyreek Hill no longer on the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna miss him for sure. I'm interested to see which kind of receivers step up in that regard, but it's going to be a lot of work for Travis Kelce. Probably some more leaning on the running game here. To me, it's hard to bet against the Cardinals knowing that they don't lose in September and October. But for me, this just feels like it feels exactly like a Chiefs-Bills game from last year that you look at it and you say, oh, I would love to bet the over. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the over 54 in this game.
Can't ever complain about somebody betting an over because an over is always fun to root for. And when you look at the Cardinal side of the football, obviously no DeAndre Hopkins to start the year. They acquired Hollywood Brown from the Ravens, so obviously Hollywood's out there. Zach Ertz is still questionable. It looks like he's going to play week 1, but like we said, we're not at that injury report level yet, at least on Thursday when the first big one comes out. Still got A.J. Green, Rondale Moore in year number 2, I think, right? He was a rookie last year. Yeah. Rondale Moore out of Purdue. I just think they have enough weapons. I agree with you that I do like the over. I'm just going to take the Cardinals here. I think it's a good spot where I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs blow them out. I just think week 1, like we talked about with the Cardinals, they play better towards the beginning of the season, at least, in recent years with Kyler as the quarterback. And I just think the Chiefs could score some points, but I don't know how they really stop. I guess the only way they stop the Cardinals is if kind of Kyler just doesn't play Kyler kind of football. James Conner had a good year for the Cardinals last year. Obviously, that's why they no longer have Chase Edmonds. Benjamin, I believe, is listed as their number 2. A good change of pace kind of guy between James Conner. I just think the Cardinals are able to score enough points here. I'll probably be on their team total too, in actual bets. But for terms of this pod, I'm going to take the Cardinals +6. And like last time, I'm on the opposite side as Kyle is. So once again, Kyle's on the Chiefs -6 of this game. So, all right, let's go. Second 4:00 game, we're going to touch on the Raiders at the Chargers. Chargers a 3.5-point favorite. Over under is 52.5. The Chargers, another team people have high expectations for this year, especially Justin Herbert. A lot of people have Justin Herbert MVP bets out there. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but kind of like the Bills, we're just kind of putting, a lot behind a team or a guy that's, shown some promise and had some stats and played well, but really never won anything, of consequence. Just so that'll be interesting. Where are you at for this game?
Yeah, this is the matchup of I took Herbert for MVP on the preseason pod. I had the Chargers to win the AFC West. You had the Raiders to win the AFC West, and you had Renfro as a sleeper, and you had the Raiders as a long shot. So a lot of preseason ties here. I'm on the Chargers -3.5. I like that it's at home, and they should be a little mad about how last season ended. So between that
Obviously,
and
that was last week of the season, all speculation of are the Raiders and the Chargers just going to play for a tie, both of them get in, and obviously the Raiders win. So yeah, you're on the Chargers. This is one of those games. I am on the Raiders, and like you talked about, I have a lot of futures, and I'm in on the Raiders. But just in terms of like game one, I don't think them losing this game or them not covering this game derails their season at all or whatever. The AFC West, to me, the team that has the first big injury, that's going to be the team that finishes last. I think all four of these teams are just so close together. I'm not really as high on the Broncos as others are. I get it. I love that defense. I just don't love Russ as much. I don't think he's bad by any means, but I just think that, that offense is an offense that, and not that Russ hasn't been a playmaker and can't be a playmaker, but I just feel like they need a playmaker at quarterback. So I'm not sure, whatever. But so like I said, the Raiders losing this first game against the Chargers, I don't think that necessarily, they lose this game, the division's gone, the Chargers already have the 1-game lead, they've already got this, whatever. People always are, especially let's say the Chargers come out and win this game 44-10. People are going to be like, we told you the Raiders were going to stink, whatever, and then the Raiders are going to come out week 2 and win. So that's just kind of, how I look at it. I'm on the Raiders too. Kyle is on the over of this game, which if I were to lean a total, I would lean the over as well.
Mm-hmm.
And may even have something else in my best bets. Maybe.
Look at you teasing for the crowd.
I was like, look at me trying to get a tease out there. Although people are just like, I don't care about the fucking Raiders. You don't need to tease me about that. All right, JP. Viking fan JP.
Mm-hmm.
Does it all in the name. It's so funny because there's no stats when we back this up. I feel like the Packers play the Bears or the Vikings in the first game of the season
every year.
Literally every single, and it's either at that 4:00 slate when everyone's watching, or it's the Sunday night game, like every single year. Remember, I think it was 2 years ago. Was it with the Packers when they went to the Bears and they won like 42-7 or 42-10 or something like that?
That was a Monday night game, I think.
Was that a Monday night? I knew it was a primetime game.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is the Bears year. And then Aaron Rodgers just came out. He took his dick out and he shoved it right down their throat.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have the opportunity to do that this week 1. They'll go to Minnesota. At least it's not primetime. It is that Sunday afternoon slot. So
it's the Fox game.
It's better than the Sunday night or the Monday night game if he's going to come out and kill you. But you kind of got a little bit different of a take of how this game might end up.
No, I have no idea how this game will end up. So
I'm trying to build some confidence in you and be like, yeah, I know exactly how this game's gonna end up. It's gonna be 3rd and 2 with 2:12 left. Rodgers is gonna roll out to the right. He's gonna look for Romeo Doubs. He's not gonna hit him, and the Vikings are gonna win the game. That's what I'm trying to instill some confidence in you.
Yeah, no, I don't see that being how the game goes. But no, I as for the pod, I'm on the Vikings +1.5. I highly doubt that I'm going to bet anything on this game because I'm just going to be terrified to do that. I think if the Vikings are going to win the game, they need to start hot and stay leading for most of the game, because if you let Rodgers score at the end of the half and then if you let Rodgers score to end the half or to start the half,
he's the quarterback version of Bill Belichick. He scored before the end of the half, and then it's like next thing you know, we were up 7 and now we're down 14.
Right. It's just so hard to beat him when he does that. But I don't know. People keep talking about the Packers defense, and I just don't buy it. Every year they talk about it, and every year it doesn't really matter. I don't trust the Vikings defense either, but I trust the Vikings offense more than I trust the Packers offense right now, outside of the most important position on the field.
Obviously, the Packers secondary is kind of what a lot of people talk about.
It's getting better. It's
and
good.
By Jair Alexander, if Jair Alexander stays healthy, he's one of those shutdown corners. Maybe not necessarily week in and week out, but he's one of those corners that you can certainly build your team.
Yeah,
Are you allergic to Jair Alexander?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I just think as a whole, losing Darius Smith hurts them, and he's coming out angry this week apparently. So I said whatever, give me the Vikings. I wanted to make it a best bet this week. I couldn't do it. I just can't. So Vikings plus 1.5, and then I'll leave it there.
I mean, I'm with you. I like the Vikings here week 1. I don't know if it's something I'm necessarily going to bet on, real money wise, or maybe try and find a teaser or some props or something to be able to attack this game better. That's just kind of how I'm looking at this. But we talked about that Packers defense, obviously led by the secondary and Jair Alexander. Kirk Cousins, it's the same question we've asked since year 3 in Washington. It's just, can Kirk Cousins line up behind the center, take the snap from the correct person, and throw it to the correct team? Because when he does that, he's a very good quarterback. Sometimes he pretends he's colorblind and he throws it to guys that are wide open. Just, it's a shame they're wearing the other color jersey. Sometimes his brain just stops working in the middle of plays where he'll start to do the right thing, and you'll just see him try and get out of the pocket or try and move in the right spot. You're like, yeah, keep doing that. And then his brain just stops working and just collapses. There's times when his brain does the opposite, when it goes into complete overload and he feels like the pocket's going to collapse, and it doesn't, and he throws the ball 2.5 seconds before he's got to throw the ball. And then when you look at the progression of the play, Justin Jefferson's 30 yards open, and all he had to do was wait another half second. So that's kind of what it always comes down to. When you look at the Vikings in terms of their weapons, I don't think you can question their weapons. They've got Justin Jefferson, who's, I'll call him a top 5 receiver in the NFL. I know people think he's more towards that top 1, 2, 3, but I just kind of think guys like him, Kupp, Devontae, Chase maybe not as much just after year 1, but even a healthy DeAndre Hopkins. I just think Justin Jefferson in that conversation. I'm not ready to say he's a top 2 receiver, but he's in that conversation. You've got obviously Thielen, who's, you could argue, the best hands in football. KJ Osborne, he's year 3? Was he a rookie last year?
I thought he was a rookie last year, but I could be wrong.
He might have been a rookie last year.
I figured we'd get here though.
Yeah, and I mean Dalvin Cook, obviously he's the he's the maybe the number 1 if he can stay healthy guy. He's the most electric guy in a backfield outside of maybe McCaffrey.
You're not gonna get to the 4th receiver?
Oh, you want me to keep going?
I figured
I wasn't gonna mention my guy, but
I figured that's exactly where we were going.
Prime Jalen Reagor.
Yeah.
Are we maybe Jalen Reagor is going to be that number 3 over KJ Osborne? Because they kind of do the similar stuff, right?
I think so. Osborne went deep a couple times, and I feel like he.
But even the Eagles used Reagor a lot last year, a lot in screens and just kind of short, get him the ball in open space and just kind of let him. And I feel like that's kind of what you want to do with Osborne too, right?
They do. I don't know that they do that a ton, but. Yeah, I definitely.
And who knows with the new, new coaching staff, new
right.
scheme, new whatever. Who knows exactly how they're going to do it? You mentioned Darius Smith.
Hello. Oh, now I can see you.
You're gonna have to do some editing.
Oh, I'm gonna have to cut that.
All right, so we cut out for a second because I guess you were getting too excited about me trying to hype up this Vikings defense and the offense. But what I was saying, not to knock you down a peg, the Vikings seem to be the number 1 defense in terms of guys that always have name value on that defense, and they're just never, I don't want to say never a top tier defense, but they're never, a shutdown defense where it's, okay, we need them to, our offense is only scoring 17 points this week. We need the defense to step it up. They're never really kind of one of those defenses. We talked about it earlier with Darius Smith in terms of that revenge factor from the Packers. But when you're just looking at other guys with named value on the Vikings, obviously you've got Danielle Hunter. He's been there forever. You've got Harrison Smith, who he's in year 47 of being, that guy on the Vikings. They got Patrick Peterson's there. Eric Kendricks is there. This is just kind of, they've got obviously, other guys in that secondary. It's Cam Dantzler. I assume he's still there.
I think so, yeah. A couple of Baylor guys on the line.
Yeah. And that's just kind of, they're surrounded by a couple of those guys. But when you're looking at it, like Peterson's older. Eric Kendricks, I don't want to say he's older, but he is older. They're just not this young kind of defense. And I really do think a lot of it does come back to Zadarius Smith. Being able to get some pressure on the quarterback. And the other thing about Zadarius Smith, which is kind of underappreciated about him, back to his Ravens days, is he's a very good cover linebacker. And I feel like that's kind of what the Vikings haven't had as much in the past. Maybe not as much down the field, like we talk about with guys like Fred Warner and stuff like that. But just in terms of like those over routes, especially in zone defenses, Zadarius Smith is one of those kind of guys that's just a smart football player and just kind of always finds the right place to be at the right time. So I'm with you. I'm on the Vikings. I don't necessarily love it week 1. Kyle's on the Packers. Makes me like the Vikings. Like I said, makes me like the Vikings a little more. So maybe I will bet it.
It just feels like one of those games that it's
almost the exact opposite of what I talked about at the beginning, where it's like
that's what I was going to say.
On Rodgers and just be like, well, if if one team's going to win this game by 40, it's probably not the Vikings.
Correct. Yes, unless we break his collarbone again, which everyone across the league is hoping for.
Was KJ Osborne, was he your punt returner last year?
Smith Marset might have been, but Osborne might have done it too. We also cut Smith Marset, so.
I was saying, if it was KJ Osborne, then he's lost his job because when Jalen Rager's on the team, Jalen Rager.
Oh yes, that's fine. He can return punts.
That'll be his. We'll save the Osborne injuries and let Rager just go out there and to return a punt, especially in the NFL, you got to be a crazy man.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute crazy. That's like a death sentence. All right. We've done enough about the Vikings. Let's go to the Sunday night game, and then we'll go through some to our fantasy corner after that, and then give our best bets and wrap this thing up. Tampa Bay Buccaneers -2.5, led by the Tom Brady with marital problems at the Dallas Cowboys.
Allegedly.
This over-under's 51, allegedly. But we've known who's won the pants in that relationship for years. Brady reports to Giselle. So, I'll start with you, JP. In terms of this, do you think the off the field of Tom Brady has any issues of the on the field for the Bucs?
The only issue it would have is just kind of the chemistry and the connection with anyone who's coming in new. I suppose I should have looked up before who their receivers were. If I was going to make.
Well, obviously Godwin's still out. So Godwin's
is he still out?
That I assume so. I didn't think he was ready for week 1.
Julio Jones coming in
right.
could be an issue there with the connection.
Mike Evans always plays well when Chris Godwin's out of the lineup.
Yep. He would be a good play this week in fantasy, probably. Not that I had thought of that before.
They brought in Kyle Rudolph as well.
True. Yeah, that's their tight
end. I assume Cameron Brate's probably still the starter. There's Cameron Brate would be the starter in Tampa Bay with another tight end there for a decade. That's just how it is. He's just always the second guy. It's almost like what was the guy in Indianapolis? The white guy, Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle's always just going to be like there, but they're always going to have like a Mo Alley Cox, or they're just going to have somebody else who, even Ebron when he was there. So yeah, they brought in Kyle Rudolph as well. Russell Gage is there. Scotty Miller's still there. So a lot of weapons there. Yes, Fournette's still there.
Yeah, and everybody's saying Fournette's going to be top 10 running back in fantasy now, especially PPR. So for some reason I drafted him. That scares me.
Gio Bernard's listed as their 4th running back. I don't see how Gio Bernard's their 4th running back.
Who's their 3rd running back?
Keyshawn Vaughn.
Okay,
they got Rashad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Gio Bernard. I think that's almost more when you're looking at this. I think that's more of like if Fournette's going to miss a game, I think Rashad White is more likely to come and be that feature back. But I think Gio Bernard, I just think what he does. He's kind of that James White kind of guy. He's just going to kind of have the same role every week, which is, I guess, why they kind of just stick him there. I guess they're going to be a team that's just going to have 4 running backs active every week.
Yeah, I guess so. That's not great for 4 net fantasy owners, but that
Unless
works.
he's just the guy.
True.
All right, so give me your pick on this game.
Yeah, this game it's a rematch of the opening game from last year, I believe. Last year, first Thursday night game, Bucks Cowboys.
Cowboys beat them, or they lost in overtime.
I thought the Bucks won by 2 scores. I could be wrong.
I thought the Cowboys covered, and everyone was. This is where my brain, especially at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, is completely.
It was like 9. Oh, they did lose by 2. Okay.
Cowboys lost by like 2, right?
Yeah, 31-29.
Yeah, because everyone was like, "Oh, the Cowboys are good this year." I remember that.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are going to do that every year. So, both teams' offenses are really good and are always going to be really good as long as those 2 guys are the quarterbacks and they have the weapons they have. I'm going over 51 here. You talked about the Cowboys' defense last week, or one of their players, Diggs, and he's going to let people burn him, and he's just going to get an interception or 2 in this game. But as long as he keeps letting people burn him, then that's fine with me for the over. So I'm going over.
It's the kind of defensive guy you look for in
an over
kind of game.
Yeah, and this is another game just like the Chiefs Cardinals where I look at it and I want to take the over, so that's what I'm going to do.
So I like the over as well. I'm going to be on the Cowboys this game, and the reason I'm going to give for not loving the over is not going to help my Cowboys pick. I think I like the Cowboys just in terms of this, just like we said, feels like one of those games where they keep it close, maybe even win it. Just even week 1, they win it. It doesn't mean, the Bucs are, Tom Brady's done. This is a shit year. It just is what it is. It's just so here's the issue with the Cowboys for me. Obviously, with Tyron Smith and the injury, that's he was one of those guys that went from being like a very good offensive lineman to like. And I know Zach Martin was a guard, but turned into like the Zach Martin of like he just all of a sudden was just like a great left tackle. They haven't really replaced him. That's kind of the issue. So they've signed Jason Peters.
Yep.
Jason Peters, I assume, is not playing left tackle because Jason Peters at this point in his career can't be a left tackle. Maybe he is. I would be surprised if he plays left tackle for them. I know we've seen their depth charts and seen where they're putting people in, whatever. But who knows? Because all it takes is Dak to take one bad hit and then to switch up that offensive line and be like, well, you know what? He's 6'7", 380 pounds. Let's put him on that side because at the very least, he's a big motherfucker that can stop guys from just running over him. I don't know. I assume they're going to go with Tyler Smith. I assume that's the guy they'll go with, the rookie or the second-year guy. I think he's a rookie out of Tulsa. They drafted him late first, early second this year, whatever it was. So obviously he was the backup, or he was, the guy that they were looking at. Dallas is always one of those teams that looks to bolster their offensive line. When you go back to the Emmitt Smith days, obviously running behind that offensive line. Zeke, running behind his, that Zach Martin line that we've talked about before. So the Cowboys are always one of those teams that seem to have the offensive line somewhat figured out. I don't know what to think of Tyler Smith. I'm not one of those guys that like goes in and watches these offensive linemen in the trenches, in their highlight videos, like, because even if I do, like, who knows what we're really looking for? Me and you aren't, offensive line experts. We're the hands and the feet and arm technique and the way your fingers are pointing up versus out and we don't know any of that shit. We just look like, he pancaked that dude. Like, he's pretty fucking good. So that's kind of one of those things where you like look at these teams and you kind of just like rely on them. The Cowboys are one of those teams that we talked about. They seem to get offensive line decisions right for the most part. Who knows if week 1 that's going to be, the case. And I guess at the very least, having Jason Peters on that roster helps the young guys like Tyler Smith because those are the kind of guys. Jason Peters is one of those guys that has been around the NFL forever. And it's like, when you play the position of a guy like that, like when he talks, you listen because there's a reason he's been doing it forever. He's obviously had lots of injury issues. And so the fact that he's still out there, still trying to be productive on a winning team, shows you how much he loves the game and just wants to help and help. We've seen all these mic'd up videos of him, helping these young guys. Like I said, maybe that doesn't matter week 1, but I do think that's going to help Tyler Smith if he ends up being that starting left tackle, for them for the near future. I think that's big for them. So that's that. I'm going to take the Cowboys plus 2.5. Is that what it is? Right? Yeah, plus 2.5 in that game. Kyle's on the under 51, so it's got to make you feel good. You're on the opposite side of Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle was pretty contrarian. We were all pretty contrarian today. Usually every game had people on either side of one thing, except for the Panthers.
All right, let's go to we'll go to the best bets at the end of the show. Let's go to what we're going to call the fantasy corner. You this week, I'll let you handle some fantasy plays that you like. I'll go over some DFS plays that I like. I do mainly DraftKings, so the pricing that I have is on DraftKings. Hit me. What are some fantasy guys you like?
Yeah, so I kind of went through and picked a quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. Obviously, you just drafted. It's week 1. If you have a quarterback, you're going to play the quarterback you have. If you have a tight end, you're playing the tight end you have. So as far as quarterback goes, if you're deciding between this guy and like someone that's around him, like a Matthew Stafford or a Trey Lance, I like the spot for Jameis this week against the Falcons. All those weapons he has, and he needs to start the season hot. Try and minimize those turnovers, maybe get out to a big lead early in the first half, and then they can run the ball more in the second half.
So let me ask you the fantasy question that I have on my team this week.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Carr or Jameis Winston?
I mean, I would lean Carr, but
I mean, I think it's inherently the better player on the better team and the better play, but the Saints against the Falcons might be the better spot. I think I'll end up going Carr, but that's one of those decisions you look at early in the season.
Yeah, it's hard because so much of my analysis on my fantasy teams, especially quarterback position, is just, all right, I drafted this guy first round, or I drafted this guy first, so I'm going to play him first. Yeah. But yeah, it's tough because the Falcons are not their secondary is just not up to par with the Chargers.
All right, hit me with the running back who is in a good spot this week.
Running back this week, playing against the Jaguars, bottom 10 run defense last year, is Antonio Gibson. He obviously, in a way, benefited from the injury to Brian Robinson, which I definitely did not think about when I drafted him. But he's average ranking on ESPN of 18th, and I like his play. He could be a top 15, top 10 running back this week. Not competing with Robinson anymore for carries, just him and McKissick. And they want Wentz to not throw the ball a ton against the Jaguars this week. So I like Gibson in that spot. As far as receivers,
I love
Judy. What?
I love this play both throughout the year and just this week. Guy out of SMU, one of my favorite receivers in the league.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are both, I think they had the exact same ranking on ESPN this week. 22-23. I love them this week against the Seahawks. Russ is going to try and go deep. He's going to burn that. And then Seahawks secondary, not good. He's going to burn that secondary for 1 or 2 long touchdowns. So it could end up being a case of that exactly like Lockett and DK in the past couple of years where one of them goes off and one of them gets nothing every week. But at least week 1, I like both of them. But Cortland Sutton was my pick. I think he's going to have the Lockett role in the past couple of years. I like him better overall, but just DK has those games where he goes off. And then a tight end, like I said, if you have your tight end, you're going to play him regardless. I just like the spot for Freiermuth this week. Bengals were bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to tight ends last year. Trubisky is going to be looking for his safety net as he tended to do in Chicago as well. So I think Freiermuth is going to have a couple big catches, and I like spot for him better than the average ranking of 10th this week. He should be a top 8, top 7 play.
I'm glad you mentioned the Judy versus Sutton, because Judy's obviously known as the speedster kind of guy, the deep threat kind of guy. That's kind of how people think of him. And obviously, not that he's not one of those guys like a Tyreek Hill that once he's behind you, he's gone. But one of the more interesting things that I remember from last year, and I was just looking at it again, their A dots. So when you're looking at their A dots, so the A dot is the average depth of target. So basically, when the ball is thrown to them, how far down the field are they from the line of scrimmage when that ball is thrown to them? Obviously, both of them have higher A dots just because of how they play. Judy was at a 10.5 last year, and Sutton was at a 15.4. So Sutton's kind of that guy that is more of the deep threat kind of guy. Judy's more of the head down and run that 9 route and, try and get by. Sutton's more of the deep post, the deep corners, that kind of a guy. So I don't think in terms of fantasy or DFS, it's not crazy to stack them both with Russ, because I think they can both get there. Two different kinds of receivers, but I think that's just something to note, because a lot of people always think of Judy as that, that super speedster guy. Not that he's not, but Sutton's the one that's had the higher A dot. So if you're looking for them to, go down the field more, Sutton might be the guy you want to go to. All right, let me go through my my DK stuff. So this is just value. So this is just like kind of lower pricing kind of guys. I haven't gotten into the higher pricing guys, or I don't want to say I haven't gotten into it, but that's one of those things that I don't finalize things until the injury report, until we've kind of gotten, not just necessarily if guys are playing or not, but, how much they're expected to play, all that kind of stuff, both offensive and defense. So let's get into some of the value plays that I have. So quarterback, you mentioned him, Jameis. He's 5,300 on DK at Atlanta. I think that's a good spot. Baker, 5,300 against Cleveland. I think that's a good spot. And then the gross quarterback play of the week, Daniel Jones at Tennessee, 5K. Obviously, he provides that rushing upside too. Usually Tennessee's defense, especially that secondary, I don't think it's going to be any good this year. It's one of those hold your nose kind of plays, and just, you could even play him by himself. You could obviously stack him with somebody else. But in a perfect segue, I like stacking with the number 1 value running back that I have this week. Saquon Barkley, 6,100, just feels way too cheap for me. I know it's not as cheap as the other value guys we're going to talk about, but to me, I'm not saying he should be in that top tier of guys, but he should be right in that second tier of guys, especially in a week like this where he's coming in fully healthy. Tennessee, we talked about, not a great defense, or not expected to have a great defense. Who knows how they're going to actually end up. But I don't mind just playing Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley this week, because I think you can get some passing from the two of them. I think they also can both just get their running wise. So I don't hate that. Obviously, you can look at other guys, in that offense. Like Kadarius Toney is a guy that a lot of people are going to play as well. But I don't think you necessarily need to play anybody with Daniel Jones. You can, but you don't have to. So we talked about Saquon at 6,100 at Tennessee. That's my first running back that I like. You mentioned him, Antonio Gibson against the Jags, 5,800. I think that's a good value. Travis Etienne, he's against Washington. They're at Washington. He's 5,600. I think that's a good value price. Obviously, it's always to see what happens with James Robinson, because I'm a James Robinson guy, and I think James Robinson is, if Travis Etienne turns into that guy, I think James Robinson may get dealt somewhere this year, because I really think James Robinson can be a number 1 or be that 1-2 punch on a team. And if the Jags are good, maybe he is that 1-2 punch with Etienne this year. Obviously, Etienne, it's his second year out of Clemson. Last year he was hurt. Mm-hmm. So, kind of the first time that he's really going to kind of get the reins, and we'll see. Week 1 against Washington, that defensive line's not bad, but they're more of getting to the quarterback and pass rushers as opposed to just pure run stoppers. I just think he can do both in terms of running the ball and catching the ball. So I like him this week at 5,600. Chase Edmonds, he's down in Miami now against the Patriots, 5,200. I just think that's too cheap, just in terms of, Edmonds is one of those guys that last year in Arizona with James Conner seemed to kind of always even get there with him and Conner splitting, I don't want to say splitting the carries, because Conner was kind of more of their in the 20s, from 20 to the goal line kind of guy, and Chase Edmonds was kind of, the 20 to 20 kind of guy. So they kind of had different roles, but I just think Chase Edmonds is in for a big year, especially I like him week 1 here at that $5,200 price tag. And then the last running back I'm looking at, Dameon Pierce, 4,800 for the Texans against the Colts. Just too cheap for a starting running back for me. He finds the end zone once, has a decent game. He's all of a sudden gotten there for you. And we'll talk about this more later in the season as it goes on, but my strategy, I like to pay down at quarterback a lot. I usually pay up at running back for the most part, because the running back is where you can kind of, you have certain receivers that they're locked into X amount of targets a week, but running backs are really where you can concentrate on he's going to get 20 carries or he's going to get 25 touches, or, so you can kind of pay up there, especially in cash games, and make your money that way. So I may end up paying up for some of these guys, but if we're looking for some of the lower price guys, those are kind of the guys that I like. Wide receivers this week, if we're looking at it, and it could get to more when we get there. But right now, I like Brandon Ayuk. He's 5,200 at the Bears. I think Brandon Ayuk kind of turned a corner halfway through last year. With Trey Lance, I think he's going to be a good option, especially the news came out today that Kittle was hurt. Who knows if he's going to play? So obviously, if he's not in, that's more targets out there for a guy like Brandon Ayuk. Maybe my favorite low price receiver of this week. I love Juju Smith-Schuster, 5,200 at Arizona. Obviously, without Tyreek Hill, Juju's kind of the guy there now. That's still Kelsey. They're still, they've got their other guys there. I don't even know who else they have there. It's still Mecole Hardman still there.
They just got Sky Moore.
Right, Sky Moore's there. But in terms of just, Juju's the veteran receiver there now. And I think, he kind of, towards the end of the time in Pittsburgh, had, people started, going back and forth on him with all his TikTok shit, and some people like him, some people didn't, whatever. I think this fresh start, especially going to a place like Kansas City, where it's like, we don't care what the fuck you do, just win football games. We've seen that with Jackson Mahomes. Like, we don't care. Like, your brother can keep doing shit as long as you keep winning football games for us, Patrick. Like, we'll shut up. So I think that's just kind of a good place for him to be. Call me a homer pick for this, but I like Rashad Bateman. He's 5,300 at the Jets. I just think that's too cheap for a guy that could be a number one, probably is a number one. Obviously, another situation where the tight ends are kind of the guy. Mark Andrews is, the guy in Baltimore. Especially Isaiah Likely now, supposedly going to have a big role after having a big preseason, and a guy that they drafted out of Coastal that they like a lot. But in terms of receivers, Rashad Bateman's kind of the guy right now. And then a flyer that I like, I don't know if I'll get there, but just at the min value, I can see myself taking a shot at Romeo Doubs. He's 3K. I just think he's kind of one of that guys. He might have one catch for 42 yards and a touchdown, and that's all you need is, a 3K kind of guy. I don't know if I'll get there. It'll kind of depend on my lineup builds and where I end up. But I just think at the minimum value, he should be a guy that at the very least gets some targets in that game. Tight ends, that's more, I'll do more towards Sunday as they come, because tight ends, a lot of the value opens up when the starter comes out, because there's only 2 or 3 on the team. So, when the starter is out or injured or, 50% or, something like that, that's kind of where I look at those tight ends. The one that jumped out to me, the first one, 3,100 was Brevin Jordan down in Houston against the Colts as well. I just think it's a cheap, whatever, but we've got guys we've got Ertz that's questionable. We've got Kelsey that's questionable now. We've got Kittle that's questionable. We've got Waller that's questionable. We've got all these guys that are questionable, and all it takes is one of those guys to miss 1 week. And his backup turned into that ultimate value. Because a tight end, if a guy's $2,500, $2,700, you're almost just taking a free square there and hoping he gets you some points, but you're doing it because it's allowing you, the $1,500 elsewhere to get up from, let's say, pay up from a guy like Dameon Pierce to a guy like Saquon Barkley. So you're like, I'll just take the whatever at tight end, hope he can get me a couple points, and just say, hey, I'd rather pay up there. So that's where I'm at on the value guys for DK. Obviously, I'll have my full cheat sheet and the betting card, on Sunday. The cheat sheet, is the big thing for me for DFS for NFL stuff. So that'll be out, usually out Saturday nights or Sunday morning. There's a UFC pay-per-view Saturday night, so it'll probably be out Sunday morning if I can't get it done before then. Always have the bomb on the week of it. The bomb of the week is the guy that you play in tournaments that is high risk, high reward. Not playing him in cash games for the most part, but a guy that's usually a running back or a receiver that can kind of go off or score 0 points. So that's kind of how I do that. All right, let's finish up with best bets. I know we're right at kind of like an hour now. We want to keep it right at around an hour for you guys, so it's not on and dragging and all that stuff. Let's do best bets. We kind of already went through them. I don't even think we kind of need to go over them. I can kind of just go through what we each have, and if you want to add anything, you can, but I know we've kind of already gone over them. I'll go through yours first, JP. So the Bills -2 on Thursday night. You've talked about that. Ravens minus 6.5, Saints minus 5.5, and Broncos minus 6.5. I think we kind of talked about mostly all of those, and you know, those are the best bets. Anything to add for week 1?
Yeah, it's just it's what I always do week 1. I always look at it and say, I'd love every favorite this week, and it's going to bite me in the ass like it always does. But as far as best bets go, those are the 4 favorites that I feel the best about. Like I said, I tried to put the Vikings in there, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm stuck with 4 favorites.
All right, Kyle's best bets. He's got 3 of them: the Patriots plus 3.5, that Raiders Chargers over 52.5, and the Packers minus 1.5. Those are his 3 best bets for the week. And then mine, I've got 4 best bets for week 1. Panthers money line, talked about it earlier. It's just one of those things where I'd just rather take, in my opinion, the better team, at least with Brissett as the quarterback for the Browns. At home, in a revenge spot for their quarterback, just take the money line and just, if it loses, it loses. I also have, I don't even really do that many teasers, so it's weird because I have 2 teasers this week, and I know you know me, I rarely do teasers. And I'll give out the same strategy I gave out last year. When you're doing teasers, do not tease across 0 because you're just giving points up. There's no, you're losing. So, like, for example, if a team is minus 4 and you're going to do a 7-point teaser, and you're going to tease them over to the other side plus 2, you're now just losing that -1/2 plus 1/2. You're kind of losing that 0. You lose that middle ground. So for me, if you're doing something like that, I'd always rather, like, if you're trying to get a team that's -4 or whatever, I'd rather parlay money lines as opposed to trying to tease, because usually you get better value as opposed to teasing across 0. So I do have 2 teasers this week. Neither of them tease across 0 because I almost never tease across 0. First one we talked about is the Rams and the Bills game. So the Rams plus 9 and over 44.5. That's a 7-point teaser. I think that's in a good spot there. And then my other teaser of the week, going back to that Raiders-Chargers game, Raiders plus 11 and the over of that game, 45.5. That's the other teaser that I like. And then I'm with you, best bet, Ravens minus 6.5. Just feels like the Ravens are one of those teams that just beats up on really bad teams. And I think the Jets, especially without Zach Wilson, I'm not going to trash talk my boy Joe Cool, but I just think without Zach Wilson, they're not a good football team. And the Ravens beat up on bad football teams. So, you know, give me that Ravens minus 6.5 as a best bet for me. I think that kind of pretty much does it for us, right?
Did you want to talk Survivor?
Oh, yeah, Survivor. I'm glad you said that. That I forgot about. So what we're also going to do to end every show this year, we'll do a Survivor pick. So it's like every normal Survivor league. You can only pick a team once, straight up, not against the spread. They win, you move on. It's simple. I mean, me and you, we both had our best bets at Ravens. I think that's a pretty obvious Survivor pick this week. So we'll take the Ravens in Survivor, and Kyle is going to take the 49ers at Chicago. So that's what we'll do for Survivor, and then we'll see what happens come like week 4 or 5 when I'm still going and you guys have been out for a couple of weeks. So we'll see how to fix that up. So that was a joke. Do you think people see this and think like when I make jokes, when I'm like cocky and arrogant, they think it's like real? They're like, oh my God, this guy's an asshole. Like he really thinks he's like
this mean host. Why is he so mean?
Somebody DM'd me and they're like, when I was posting about the preseason one we did, they're like, your co-hosts don't care that you call them Dumb and Dumber. It's like, it's a fucking joke. It's a fucking joke.
And it's usually true.
Well, it's true. Well, if we're doing it, I'm dumb, you're dumber, and Kyle's dumberer. That's if we're being completely honest, that's usually how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just I always wonder that, like, people who don't know me or don't get me is like, oh, he's such an arrogant asshole. It's like, well, I am, but I'm not. You know what can make me more of an arrogant asshole? Is if we get everyone who watches to follow us on Twitter, to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Imagine we start getting a bunch of views on these videos and we start, just showing to random people with algorithms. That's when Baumohl the asshole, Baumohl the arrogant, cocky bitch is going to come out. Just kidding.
I like that. I like Baumohl the arrogant. That'd be a good, 16th century knight's name.
Like Alexander the Great's invading.
And Baumohl the arrogant standing up to him.
No soldiers, no nothing, no plan, no whatever. It's just, I'm fucking better than you. I'll kick your ass. Oh, Alexander the Great, my ass.
It's one guy and he's got a DFS cheat sheet.
Yeah, right. Everyone's attacking me. But did you play Noah Brown this week? Play Noah Brown. I'll get you a lot of money. I always talked about that where I think I would be able to survive in jail because I could always just be like, obviously not with NFL DFS stuff, but like just be that guy that's just like, okay, like gang number 1's over here, gang number 2's over here. Like I'm just gonna kind of be that middle ground where it's like, all right, like we got to get these two together. Like Baumohl's gonna be right in the middle, and then either ends up with me being like the number 1 guy in jail or dead on day 2.
Yeah.
Give me a joke. Let's finish with a joke. Give me a joke. You gotta
Give you a
have
joke.
your arsenal to finish this up with.
Um.
I'll finish up with a joke.
Yeah. I had one.
You go, and then I'll finish up with my joke, and then we'll end it.
I was gonna say your iMovie, how it's been acting this week.
That was you basically stole my joke. I was gonna say the joke that I'll end with this week is the funniest joke that maybe this year, the New York Giants. That's the joke we'll end with. Now that Kyle's not here, we don't have him to yell at us at the end. And the fact that his college team might be all right this year, we got to get on him and his NFL team sucking. So that was week 1. Thank you guys. Hopefully Kyle's back next week. If not, we'll rock the 2 of us again because, show must go on. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow us on Twitter. And yeah, we'll update anything, as the weekend goes on. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.